It's not about constantly being on the grind to self-promotion and gaining wealth and gaining power and gaining influence. Sometimes it's just about, how do I serve the people around me and love the people around me well? Hey, welcome to the Bible Keys channel, where we're just talking about Christianity, the Bible, faith, and reason. And we have been in just a short series as we've jumped into this new year, 2025, just talking about what are some ways that I can be growing in 2025, particularly growing as a Christian, growing in my relationship with Jesus. And the first video, we talked about just the importance of reading scripture. The second video, we talked about the importance of going to church. And in both of those, I said that neither of those are these like profound, new, mind-blowing things that you've never heard before. But most of the time, growth doesn't come from these profound new things. It comes from doing the same old things we know to do, but we're just not doing as much as we should be, right? And so that's kind of what we talked about. If you haven't watched those, go check those out. But we're going to get into this one. And I do think this one might be a curveball for some of you, but maybe not for everybody. But the one I wanted to talk about this time is, I'm going to call it hospitality. I think that if we want to grow in our relationship with God, part of something that can help us with that is practicing hospitality. And what do I mean by hospitality? I literally mean just intentionally inviting people into your life, inviting people into your home, your apartment, your whatever, to spend time with them for the sole purpose of loving on them and creating relationship with them, creating community with them, maybe even helping them carry their load. And really the biggest thing that I want to stress is this isn't inviting people in so that they can promote you, or so that you can somehow get something out of it, so that they can, they've got something to offer. They're going to provide an increase in influence, or an increase in, power, or an increase in whatever goals that you're trying to achieve. That's not what I'm talking about. I think our culture does a really good job of trying to network and trying to get ourselves around people who are going to promote our interests, or who are going to feed into our vision for ourselves and all that kind of stuff. And whatever, like that's fine if that's what you want to do, but I'm talking about this isn't the grind. This isn't self-promotion. This is hospitality. This is, how do I love other people well? And the scripture that comes to mind to me for this is probably one that you might be familiar with, but it's Matthew 25:34-40. It says, "The king will say to those on his right, 'Come, you who are blessed by my Father, take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me.' Then the righteous will answer him, 'Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger and invite you in, or needing clothes and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and go visit you?' And the king will reply, 'Truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me.'" And I think there are some particulars there that I'm not going to get into, that things that we are as Christians called to do, and that as a Christian community we should be doing, in regards specifically to like people like prisoners, people like the scripture makes reference over and over and over again, from the Old Testament through the New Testament, to how we're supposed to care for widows and orphans and the disenfranchised. And so I'm not talking about that right now, but I do recognize that this is talking about that. So I just want to say I'm not trying to take away from that. But what I am saying is, I think part of what I want to stress here is that the focus is on people who aren't bringing anything to the table for you. Right? We're supposed to serve people. We're supposed to love people, help people, feed and give drink to, people who the goal isn't that they're bringing something to the table for me. The goal is just that I'm bringing something to the table for them. And I think that if we want to grow as Christians, we've got to be asking ourselves, where in my rhythm, where in my schedule, where in my life am I creating time to be spending with people who aren't bringing anything to the table for me? And that's not the point. And I don't care, because the whole point is that I want to bring something to the table for them. And to really simplify this, there's just this section there's a book called The Screwtape Letters. It's by C.S. Lewis. If you've never heard of it, it's great. It's a fiction, and it's from the perspective of a demon writing letters to his nephew, who's like a younger, whatever apprentice demon, I guess. I don't know. And he's giving him advice on how to tempt and try to keep a man away from growing in his relationship with God. And there's this one letter that he writes that's all about this idea of man's outlook on his own time. And this speaks so much to me because it's so true that if I have a time slot that I think is my own, that I want to do something with, and something interrupts that time slot or changes that time slot, and I no longer have that at my disposal, I get a little grumpy, okay? And I'm sure that a lot of you feel the same way. And so this is calling that out. It's calling out this tendency in humanity that we feel like time is our own. And when something infringes on that time, we feel like we've been wronged. But for the Christian, this is important. And this is at the end. It says, he is also talking about the Christian, the man that they're talking about, in theory, committed to a total service of the enemy, which in this case is God. So it's saying that in theory, Christians are committed in total service to God. Okay. And if you're a Christian like me, we would say like, yes, that's true. Right. But this is what it says. And if God appeared to him in bodily form and demanded that total service for even one day, and demanded that total service. So that total service that we're saying we're supposed to be committed to God, if God actually showed up in front of us and demanded that we make good on that for one day, we would not refuse, right? It says he would not refuse. He would be greatly relieved if that one day involved nothing harder than listening to the conversation of a foolish woman. And he would be relieved almost to the pitch of disappointment if for 1/2 hour in that day, the enemy said, now you may go and amuse yourself. Now, if he thinks about this, if he thinks about his assumption for a moment, even he is bound to realize that he's actually in this situation every day. And I think that's the thing that we have to remember when it comes to, I'm going to use my time, my energy, my resources to be in relationship with, to build community with, to love on people who aren't necessarily bringing anything to the table for me, but I just want to bring something to the table for them. This is the mindset that we have to have, is if God showed up to me in bodily form right in front of me and said, hey, you said you're serving me. Are you going to serve me right now? And I'd say, yes, Lord, I want to serve you. And he said, okay, just go spend some time with some people that maybe you wouldn't normally spend time with. Go invite a group of people over to your house and feed them and play some board games with them and ask them how their lives are and maybe pray with them. I'd be like, that is the easiest thing he could have asked me to do. Yet when I get that opportunity, which we have that opportunity all the time, I think of it like it's an intrusion, like it's a nuisance. But the reality is it's not. It's a way that I can serve God through hospitality with my time. It's the situation that we're in every day. And the truth is that even though God can demand all of our time from us, he doesn't. He actually lets us do things that we enjoy. And so we should be grateful for that. And then be grateful for the opportunities that he does give us to be good reflections of him in the lives of people around us. So again, this is a little bit different. We talked about scripture reading, we talked about church. Those seem very obvious to us maybe. And hospitality might be something obvious to you as a way that you can actually be serving God and growing in your relationship with God, but it might not be. And I want to end on this note too, because I do think one of the things that we grow in, one of the things that we learn as we practice more hospitality, I'll actually say two things. One is I think that we learn to see other people how God sees them. We can have kind of our own, maybe prejudices are the wrong words, but we have our own prejudices or biases, or we have our own assumptions about people, stereotypes about people that we let kind of live in our heads, and that we let them affect the way that we look at people, treat people, the expectations we have of people, all of those kinds of things. But when we begin to spend intentional time with people that aren't bringing anything to the table for us, one of the things that we start to do is we start to recognize these people are actually amazing. They're incredible, and in so many ways, they give us so much to learn. We can learn from those people. And we really learn our own faults and failures by seeing just how amazing these people are that we've written off for so long. And so I think that's one of the reasons that we actually put ourselves around people. And one of the reasons that we grow is because when God puts us in relationship with these people and we think like, oh, I'm bringing something to the table for them, what really happens is God's humbling us by showing us how much they really do bring to the table for our own character, for our own spiritual lives. that we were just writing off, And so I think that's really real. And maybe I'm just confessing myself. Maybe you guys are just a lot more holy, a lot more righteous than I am, and you never write people off like that. But I think the truth is that we all do. And I think one of the beautiful things when we build a relationship and community with these people is that God actually corrects us and he rebukes us, and he humbles us, and he uses the people that we tend to write off to show us how much more we still have to grow. And the other thing is just that, man, we get to practice and grow in becoming more like Jesus. We get to become more Christ-like. I think of the fact that, right, Jesus practiced washing his disciples' feet. What's he doing? He, the one who's supposed to be the leader, the one who's supposed to be in the place of honor, is putting himself in a submissive place. He's putting himself in the role of a servant to serve those that are around him. And this is a way that we get to do the same thing. We get to practice the role of a servant by inviting people into our home, by feeding them, by giving them drink. I think about like in The Hobbit when all the dwarves show up and Bilbo is all annoyed, but he's feeding them out of his own larder. He's giving them his own wine and his own drink and his own food and his own cheese and his own bread. And he's annoyed the whole time, but he's still doing it. And it's the same thing for us. We might be annoyed by it. We might feel like, well, this is not what I had planned for all of these things. But what do? We get to learn that as I give out of my own goods, if I give out of my own time and resources and energy, God's actually doing something in all of this. He's forming something in me, and he's allowing me to be a blessing to other people. They're being a blessing to me, even though it might not be what I expected or how I expected it, all of these kinds of things. And there's even more. This isn't like an all-inclusive, teaching on hospitality. This is just a couple of points that I think these are things that we can do better at practicing. It's not about constantly being on the grind to self-promotion and gaining wealth and gaining power and gaining influence. Sometimes it's just about, how do I serve the people around me and love the people around me well? So that's my encouragement. Start to think, how can I, as a regular practice through 2025, begin to practice hospitality, invite people into my home, invite people into my life, go out to coffee shops, take people out to lunch, whatever it might be, begin practicing hospitality with people and grow in love towards people and allow the love of God to really show through you in the lives of other people. And you get to, again, be put in a position where you get to be humbled and get to be taught and corrected and all of those kinds of things, which we actually want to be taught and corrected by God. You get to be put in that position as well. So if you want to grow in 2025, begin to practice hospitality. Listen, if you like these kinds of little videos, these kinds of little encouragements, do me a favor, click subscribe. Go ahead and share this with a friend, and then put down in the comments, is this something that you practice? Maybe what's something that you have learned or grown in through practicing hospitality? Or if maybe this is something that you've never thought of before, well, I'd like to hear about that too. What are your thoughts? What comes to mind for you as you hear this? But thanks so much. Thanks for joining. We'll see you next time.